Kurma Avatar, the second among the 10 avatars of Sri Mahavishnu. All of us know it only in one context, the great celestial event of Samudra Manthana, the churning of the ocean. In carvings on temples, in paintings, or anywhere where you find the Dashavatar depiction, you will always see Kurma Avatar placed as the second incarnation of Vishnu. But beyond this, what do we really know? No great temples, no independent worship, no movies, no pop culture presence. Beyond the ocean churning aspect, Kurma Avatar seems to vanish into silence. Why is that? Why does this avatar, though so central to the creation itself, remain so enigmatic and hidden? What if there are traditions that have quietly survived away from the popular memory? What if there are sacred shrines where Kurma Avatar has been worshipped continuously for over thousands of years? What if the very secret of Kurma Avatar's presence is present in every temple's architecture? Every sanctum foundation lies in these traditions unknown to most of us today. In this video, let us try to understand the forgotten mysteries of Kurma Avatar, the tortoise that holds not just Mount Mandhara but perhaps the weight of Dharma and the cosmos itself. Let's get started. Kshirasagara Madharam, the great celestial event of churning of the ocean of milk. When the Devas and Asuras used Mount Mandhara as the churning rod, it was Sri Mahavishnu who took the Kurma Avatar to bear the immense weight of Mount Mandhara. He became the bedrock for this event. Most of us think of this as just one story, but anecdotally saying it, I believe 50 to 60% of our Puranic lore is built around two great events. One is this, the Kurma Avatar, the Kshirasagara Madharam, from which Ma Lakshmi is born, Dhanvantari emerges, Amrit itself comes forth, and even the story of Rahu Ketu finds its origin. Most importantly, this very event forms the foundation of Diwali, though many of us celebrate it today without knowing its roots. The other great story is Daksha Yajna, where Sati Devi sacrifices her life and Lord Shiva destroys the sacrifice, leading eventually to the divine union of Shiva and Parvati. That story for another day. But this churning of the ocean is central to so much of our tradition, explained in the Puranas like Bhagavata Purana, Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana, etc. In the quiet coastal belt of Andhra Pradesh, far away from the grandeur of big cities, lies a remote village called Sri Kurmam. Here stands something truly unique, the only temple in the entire world dedicated to Lord Sri Mahavishnu in his Kurma Avatar, the divine tortoise form. Unlike the familiar forms of Narayana, Rama or Krishna, here Vishnu is worshipped as Kurmanadha Swami, the cosmic tortoise who bore the weight of Mount Mandhara during the Kshirasagara Madharam. And what makes this even more extraordinary is this is a Swayambhu temple. The Sthala Puranam itself says that this temple was manifested in the Krita Yuga. It is a very ancient one, and you can really get the feel of it if you happen to visit it, for its architecture and a lot more. The story of Sri Kurmam is not just about the temple. Its Sthala Puranam, the sacred origin story of this temple, is actually found in Padma Puranam. Now naturally we may ask, when people say that this temple is thousands of years old, going back to many yugas, is it really true, or is it simply a myth repeated generation after generation? So if we look at it with that lens, let me give you one fascinating example. Beside the temple is a small lake. In the Padma Purana, it is said that Sri Mahavishnu himself created this lake with his Sudarsana Chakra for the benefit of a king called Shweta Chakravarti, who ruled this region in Krita Yuga. And even today, this same lake is known as Shweta Kundam, carrying the name of that king around thousands of years ago who lived, and the living memory is preserved in the tradition even today. Now, Shwetakundam is not just any pond. This is where people perform Visarjan, or the immersion of the sacred ashes and mortal remains of the departed. In Kashi, we know this tradition is well rooted, but here, in this unique temple of Kurma Avatar, the same tradition has lived on. There is even a local saying that when bones are dropped into this pond, they turn into stone. At first it sounds mythical, but really it points to something profound. This practice has been going on for so many thousands of years that bones immersed here would have long fossilized into the very lake bed itself. Sri Kurmam is not only a temple in the world where Vishnu is worshipped in the form of Kurma Avatar, but right beside in the sacred lake where the tradition of afterlife rites has been continuing, which is very unique. Nowhere in the temples of Vishnu or in Vaishnavism you'll find this tradition of afterlife rites happening right next to a Vishnu temple. Sri Kurmam doesn't just preserve the only Kurma Avatar shrine in the world. It is also home to some of the rarest iconographies of Vishnu. How was Vishnu worshipped before Rama Avatar or Krishna Avatar? One such ancient iconography is Vaikunta Kamalaja, a unique form where Vishnu and Ma Lakshmi are fused together in one Murti. This was an early and profound expression of the Vaishnava worship. But today, this form is completely lost. You will not find it in any living temple. What survives are relics, fragments, etc. in museums. 1000 to 1200 years ago, it was worshipped, this iconography was worshipped in remote regions of Jammu Kashmir region. But with invasions and temple destructions, even that memory is wiped out. Another equally rare form is Vishnu Durga, the goddess Durga in the manifestation of Vishnu. You find this prominently at Vaishno Devi temple and in small pockets across Tamil Nadu. But here in Sri Kurmam, Vishnu Durga is worshipped alongside Kurmanatha Swami, and it is a living tradition. It is a very rare form of fusion of Ma Durga as Sri Mahavishnu, revered as Vishnu Durga, found only in this particular temple of Sri Kurmam, and then again in Vaishno Devi. So this is another very rare aspect that this temple has preserved over centuries. When we talk about the ancient temples of Bharat, especially those that are over 1000 to 1500 years old, the first thing that comes to mind is their breathtaking rock-cut architecture, the precision of their stone carvings and their sheer timelessness. But today I don't want to repeat that. This temple is not just about stone or carvings. It's about resilience. The resilience of our ancestors and their determination to protect what they held sacred. During the brutal invasions of Aurangzeb, as history tells us, thousands of temples, Hindu, Jain and other dharmic fold, were desecrated, plundered and razed. But this temple survived. And the reason it survived is quite interesting and remarkable. Unlike towering gopurams or the vast temple complexes, this shrine is very small. The sanctum is modest and the gopuram is barely 20 to 25 feet high. And this is the precise reason what turned out as an advantage in protecting this temple. The locals, during the invasions, they completely buried the temple under heaps of sand and limestone powder, concealing it so that the marauding armies would never even know it existed. Imagine the sheer devotion behind this act. Hundreds of villagers worked together to wield this deity in silence so that centuries later we could still stand and witness the only Kurmanatha Swami temple in the world for Kurma Avatar. Even today, if you look closely at these carvings, especially the second picture, sorry I could not get enough pictures even though I personally visited multiple times right from my childhood. But I'm sure anybody in that region definitely knows this, how this temple was preserved. In the second picture especially, if you see, those powdery marks are not just stains of paint or something. They are the fingerprints of history, evidence of how far our ancestors went to keep this temple safe for us. And this reminds of something important. We often say that north of India bore the brunt of invasions while south preserved the tradition. But the truth is, temples across the south too faced destruction. Many were lost, many were desecrated, and yet some were saved, not by kings, not by armies, but by the quiet, relentless faith of the common people. That is what makes this temple special. Because beyond its artistry, beyond its sacredness, it is a living story of resilience, of bhakti and of dharma. Another very interesting and nostalgic memory I have of this temple goes back to when I was a boy, around 12 to 13 years old. That is the earliest memory of this temple I have. I still remember visiting with my parents. Unlike today, when the temple's premises were neatly maintained and protected, back then the entire temple surroundings were alive with tortoises. Not just one or two, you could see dozens of them scattered everywhere. Some of them were so tiny that they could literally fit in your palm or even in your pocket. So whenever we did a pradakshina, going around this temple in reverence, we had to walk carefully, watching each step to make sure that we didn't actually step on one of these little beings. That was part of the charm, part of the wonder of visiting this temple back then. And I still remember as children, going to most temples felt ordinary. I mean, we don't really know what's bhakti and all at that age. We didn't really grasp the deeper meanings and all that. But going to Sri Kurmam was always special for us, always exciting because of the tortoises. Because we knew that we would get to see those tortoises and maybe handle one. It was as if the deity himself has filled his sacred place with his own symbols, still living reminders of the Kurma Avatar. What makes it even more fascinating is that these tortoises were not raised or kept by anyone. They are wild ones, living freely in the pond and the temple surroundings. Over time, the entire village itself grew around this temple and that sacred lake, the Shweta Kundam that I talked about. And so is this Kurma Kshetra. You truly find tortoises everywhere, naturally, as if nature itself chose to honor the avatar here. Among the 18 Mahapuranas, there is one ancient text dedicated to the Kurma Avatar itself, the Kurma Puranam. Most of us are familiar with the big names like the Vishnu Purana or Shiva Purana or Skanda Purana or Bhagavata Purana. But how many of us actually know that there is a Purana in the name of Kurma Avatar? The Kurma Puranam is a treasure trove. Naturally, it speaks of Kurma Avatar and the great episode of Samudra Mandana and the cosmic churning of the ocean, but it doesn't stop there. It dives deep into the cosmology of Sarga, Pratisarga, Pralaya, the eternal cycle of creation, dissolution, and recreation. And then it's also narrating the entire Varaha Avatara story, where Vishnu rescues the earth itself, and the famous episode of Daksha Yagna Vinashana, the one which I just mentioned, a very, very important event that it is mentioned in almost all the Puranas, Daksha Yagna Vinashana, the destruction of Daksha's sacrifice, which is one of the most pivotal events that shaped up a lot of Puranic corpus eventually. The Kurma Puranam then takes us on sacred journey to the Kashi Mahatmyam, elaborating on the glory of Varanasi. It describes in detail the importance of various tirthas and kundas, the sacred water bodies across Bharat. It also talks about Varnashrama Dharma, which is the duties of the household people, and of various other age groups. The Kurma Puranam is not only about avatars and cosmic stories. It goes much deeper into the philosophies that shaped Bharat's thought. It begins with Prakriti Purusha Tattva, the eternal principle of nature and consciousness, the interplay between material and the spiritual that drives the creation itself. It explores the Sankhya Darshana, a unique school of philosophy that tries to understand the universe through the chain of cause and effect, categorizing existence into elements, senses, and consciousness. This is one of the most fascinating sections because it shifts from bhakti into a highly analytical, almost scientific worldview. Then the Purana sings about Shiva Mahima and Devi Mahatmya, celebrating the greatness of Lord Shiva and Ma Parvati and their roles in maintaining the cosmic balance. Alongside, it touches about Pashupata Darshana, an ancient Shaiva philosophy that emphasizes on discipline and devotion. The text also recounts many Avatara Kadhas, the stories of different incarnations, and the Vamshanucharita, genealogies of kings and dynasties weaving together. One particularly intriguing section is its discourse on time, how to divide and measure it, from the tiniest fractions of a second to the vast stretches of cosmic ages. It lays out systems of astronomical calculations, showing how our ancients not only revered time as sacred, but also sought to measure and master it with precision. And then perhaps most relevant to us today, the Kurma Puranam talks about Kali Yuga Lakshanani, which is the signs of Kali Yuga. It predicts and the declines of the values and the erosion of dharma and the unfolding changes of the age we are living in right now. So when you look at Kurma Purana as a whole, it is not a single thread narrative. It is a vast compendium that connects philosophy, cosmology, deity worship, dynasties, astronomy, and the destiny of where this world would unfold in the direction of dharma. And here is a little known fact that Kurma Puranam predates Bhagavata Puranam. That means many of the narratives we popularly know from the Bhagavatam were already present in seeds here in the Kurma Purana. We'll talk about that at the end of this video. But just to know that there is one big ancient scripture in the honor of Kurma Avatar, which itself is very less known. So that should also explain how much of alien would this text be to all of us or most of us. Now let's move a bit away from the Kurma Avatar itself, but stay with this very fascinating idea that the tortoise is the foundation for the cosmos and its existence. That's what we believe in Hinduism. In Hinduism, as we know, during the Samudra Mandana, Vishnu takes the avatar of Kurma and Mount Mandara is placed upon its back, and the tortoise becomes the base for the foundation that holds steady the cosmic churning. That is the broad symbolism in our tradition. The tortoise as the silent supporter of all creation. But what is truly interesting is that similar ideas appear even in Buddhism as well. And I want to be very clear here, that does not mean Buddhism is worshipping the Kurma Avatar, not at all. These are two distinct traditions, two distinct expressions. What we are talking about is the philosophical resonance, the similarity of thought. In Buddhism, especially within Tibetan traditions, there is this concept called Shrid Paho. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but Shrid Paho. That's how it is pronounced, I guess. What you're seeing here on the right side is a traditional copper plate depiction of this. The idea is that tortoise carries the entire cosmic mandala of existence on its back. Just like in Hinduism, where the tortoise supports creation, in Buddhism too, tortoise becomes the grounding force, the base upon which the universe itself is balanced. Now remember, Buddhism has multiple streams, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, each with its own depth of philosophy and symbolism. But across these, Shrid Paho represents a universal diagram of existence with the tortoise as the carrier of cosmic order. So the important takeaway is this: both traditions, though distinct, converge on a profound symbolism, the tortoise as the steady foundation of the cosmos. In Hinduism, it's Kurma Avatar of Vishnu. In Tibetan Buddhism, it is Shrid Paho carrying the mandala. Different paths, different expressions, but the same eternal truth. The universe needs a foundation that holds steady through chaos. That thought is common between Buddhism and Hinduism. And this idea doesn't stop there with the Kurma Avatar or with the Buddhist concept of Shrid Paho. The very same thought, that the tortoise is the foundation of creation, is also deeply rooted in the Hindu iconography as well. For example, in the tradition of Sri Vidya, the entire Shri Chakra, which is considered as the blueprint of the creation itself, is often carved on the back of a tortoise. This symbolism is profound. Just as the tortoise holds steady the weight of the cosmos, it also becomes the sacred base upon which the Shri Chakra, the diagram of the divine creation, rests. This is not a recent practice. It is as ancient as Adi Shankaracharya or even predates him, because he himself consecrated many Shri Yantras carved on the back of a tortoise. That shows the sheer antiquity and continuity of this idea carried forward over thousands of years. So when you walk into a temple dedicated to Ma Shakti, just don't look up at the grand Gopuram or the deity alone. Look carefully at the feet of the goddess. In many temples across India, you will find this small tortoise with Shri Chakra etched onto its back. Then you'll be able to know the long-lasting and the continuous iconography of Kurma in almost all the temples. This is the beauty of our culture. Vishnu as Kurma, the cosmic supporter, Buddhism's Shrid Paho, the tortoise carrying the mandala, and Sri Vidya's Shri Chakra resting upon the tortoise. Different streams, different expressions, but all pointing to one truth. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Before we conclude this video, let me give you a glimpse of the actual shloka from Kurma Puranam, the scriptural source that first tells us about this avatar. Yes, we know about the Kurma Avatar from the temple walls, carvings, and the local traditions, from folklore and from worship practices, but the OG source, the original fountain of knowledge, is there right here in the Puranas authored by Vyasa Maharshi, long before Bhagavata Purana came into existence. This particular passage or shloka describes how the Devas and Daityas churned the ocean of the milk using Mount Mandara as the rod, and it is here that Lord Janardhana assumed the form of tortoise to support the cosmic churning. Now the word choice here is deeply significant. Vyasa Maharshi could have simply said that Vishnu or Narayana assumed the avatar of Kurma, but he instead said that Janardhana, he used the word Janardhana. Madhyasthane tada tasmin Kurma Rupi Janardhanaha. Every divine epithet has a purpose and a meaning. Janardhana here means the one who is for the people. So when the says that Janardhana became Kurma, it is telling us something profound, that the divine, out of compassion for the people, chose even the humblest of the forms, a tortoise, to hold the weight of the universe. And just like the foundations were never appreciated, it is the building that we always see. Maybe owing to that mentality of people, we don't really appreciate Kurma Avatar. And finally, let me share one very interesting and deeply thought-provoking line from the Kurma Puranam itself. Though many Brahmas and many Rudras and many Narayanas are spoken of, in truth, there is only one Bhagwan Ishvara, and that is time, Kala itself. This is such a profound perspective. On one side, the Kurma Puranam gives us bhakti, rich stories of avatars, divine deeds and worship traditions. At the same time, it steps into a starkly philosophical realm, the philosophical truth, that everything, all gods, all worlds, all creations arise and dissolve in time. It reminds us that we are just a speck in this vast cosmos, if you like to call it as multiverse, that all our stories, our lives, our civilizations are carried on endlessly with the flow of time. That is why time is revered as Mahakala. And what you chose to call that ultimate force or the Mahakala as Shiva, Shakti or Vishnu or simply Kala is up to you. The essence remains the same. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Sri Krishna says, Kalah Kalayatamaham, I am the time. The Kurma Puranam echoes that very truth. So while we remember Kurma as the tortoise who held the Mount Mandara steady during the churning, we must also remember the deeper message. The foundation of all its existence is the time itself. With all that done and said, I hope you got reasonable insights into this very less known avatar of Sri Mahavishnu, the Kurma Avatar. And as always, thanks for watching.